Hello, it's Vint. Hey, Vincent, how are you?
Mr. Cerf, what a pleasure to see you, one to one.
So I'm sitting here in my family room. I hope the clutter in the background isn't too distracting.
It's inspiring. It makes you almost look human
Oh,
instead of a legend.
well, at least I'm still a living legend as opposed to the other kind.
Well, I have to first start by giving you the warmest greetings of a guy named Jan Prince, and he was the guy which I started ESOC in Holland with.
Uh-huh.
Do you still remember us? Remember us, the Dutch chapter, which
Of
sent the
course.
first international check. I'm still proud of that.
Yes, absolutely. I remember we had this big thing. It was wonderful. I remember that with great warmth, and I'm glad that we're staying connected, even though it's so infrequent.
What do you do nowadays? Are you slowing down, or are you just?
Oh, no, it just keeps going. I'm still, full time at Google, and I'm still running the people-centered internet, the Innovation for Jobs group, and the Marconi Society. Those are all three nonprofits that I chair. I'm still active at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. I was just out at the Goddard Space Flight Center. I sit on the National or the NASA Advisory Council. I, I've just finished, almost finished chairing the committee to search for a new director for the National Science Foundation's Computer and Information Systems and Engineering group, which spends $1 billion a year on computer science research. Let's see, what else have I got on my hands? There's another something else that I'm.
And
oh, oh,
do you have a partner and kids? Do you see them, or what is that? Is that
I,
not in there?
our kids are out on the West Coast. I have two grandsons in San Francisco. In fact, in a couple of days, we're flying out there. I have a bunch of meetings to run, including the Marconi Society annual event, but we'll see our grandchildren for at least a day or so. Then I'm going up to Oregon to lecture at the University of Oregon. Oh, I know the other thing I just recently undertook to do again is to sit on the visiting committee on advanced technology for the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, which is part of the Department of Commerce. I used to chair that group, and then I went away for a few years, and they said, come back, and so I agreed to do that. Anyway, so you get the point. Oh, and I'm in the middle of finishing a book for Oxford Press with a colleague in Mexico City. Yes, life is full.
I can see that you are really relaxing and that you're enjoying your old age and that you're slowing down. I mean, it's a good way. Okay, so before we talk about blockchain, I just wanted to ask you. I mean, tech was always, the most wonderful thing since sliced bread, and the last year, also especially since the elections, there was a lot of criticism. Now, it's the source of all evil and stealing our attention. And I've always loved Google, and I always gave Google a huge amount of benefit from the doubt. You look at it from the inside. I just looked at the developer conference, the I/O conference,
Right.
and
Yes, and more recently, we did the cloud thing too,
the
cloud
cloud
next.
thing with 30,000 people there. That criticisms on tech in general, and specifically in Google, did it arrive internally? Do they see is there some merit on it? Because I also see that they do some changes. That they basically make some changes to Android, and they allow you to know what they know. I mean, how is that working inside Google at the moment?
I think Google recognizes that it has a responsibility to reassure people in a demonstrable way that we protect their privacy and respect it. Um, you notice that even we have not had major breaches like some of the other companies have. Uh, the worst one we had was in 2010, and we had reason to believe it was a Chinese initiative. And our response to that was to start using two-factor authentication and encrypting everything in transit and at rest. The more recent issue arose with regard to Google Plus, and there were complaints. What we announced that there was not a breach. We found a vulnerability we announced that there was a vulnerability that had been found and that we had fixed it. It was, unfortunately, in the current atmosphere, it was treated as if it had been a breach.
Yeah.
And there was no breach that we could detect. We hadn't found anybody's information that had been obtained. We just found a path through which it might have been.
Yeah, but the thing, I mean, in terms of computer science, you're the best. You're the best in terms of finding the viruses and protecting us against it. But it's more like you're responsible for 7 services which use more than 1 billion people, and you are responsible for us spending endless amount of time selecting news for us. I mean, I'm having my 12-year-old. I'm having fights with him. I mean, I'm having fights with myself, with everybody. So the whole time thing and the selection of news things and the bubble thing, and you are brilliant in computer science, but to run a country with more than 1 billion people using technology is something completely different in terms of skill sets which you need. So first you need to realize it's a problem, and second thing, you need to do something about it. And it's not about computer science, it's about hacking. I don't see that as an issue with Google, and you have been very responsible.
I'm glad to hear that. There's some people who would like to blame us for almost every bad thing that happens on the net. And to be quite honest, though, the YouTube part of our services is a source of real concern. I mean, the New Zealand massacre, for example, and the unbelievable uploading of that video over and over and over again. It was hard to combat. Mm-hmm. The scale of these things it makes it really hard to cope with, especially if you're trying to use automatic tools. Mm-hmm. So that's not an excuse, but it's a reality that we struggle with. How to defend against the abusive use of these platforms at the scale at which we have to cope with it. I mean, it's still true that 400 hours per minute of video is uploaded into YouTube.
Oh yeah, but I'm more interested nowadays. YouTube is about an hour of my day at least. Okay, and if I basically look for Vint Cerf speeches, I get a whole bunch of Vint Cerf speeches and I like it. But I've noticed I'm very much into climate change. I've also looked at some skeptic climate change scientists, and YouTube immediately started to put me in the direction of extreme, critical anti-climate scientists, and of course you click on them. I mean, the whole algorithm is developed so that I basically get what I want, and I get more and more in my tunnel vision. So I mean, you optimize the algorithm so that I keep on looking, and that you give me what I want. And on the other hand, you need to now you're being made responsible for being a sanitized news site, and those are different kinds of skills, different kinds of responsibilities.
So there are 3 things that I think we should take out of this part of our conversation. The first one is that deliberately building feedback loops that drive people towards this extreme content is probably wrong. And in fact, a responsible thing to do is to say that if I think this person is interested in this segment of our content, then we should ask ourselves, what other content should this party see that is a countervailing thing? And that would be a very interesting algorithm to try to develop, to say we want you to see multiple sides of the story. Even if you didn't want to, we want to offer that to you. You don't have to click on it, but we want to draw your attention to that. That's a really interesting challenge, and I think I can't tell you that we're going to do that, because I don't know if we're going to do that, but I would advocate for that. The second thing, and the thing that I'm sure you would resonate with strongly, is that we need to help people recognize how important critical thinking is. And we actually want them to be comfortable with the idea that you should be a little skeptical of almost everything and ask questions about, where did this come from? Are there corroborating evidence, for the positions that are being taken? Did this party put this up with the intent of convincing me to do something I don't want to do? And people should feel comfortable with that attitude. but some people are very uncomfortable with it because it takes work, for one thing. It's easier to just listen to what you want to hear.
Yeah.
And
And and I also think that Americans have a fantastic developed sense of being critical about what's the normal thing. I mean, conspiracy thinking is developed wonderfully in America. I mean, we Dutch are extremely boring in you know in the amount of differences of opinion.
yeah.
We have very small level of opinion, even though we think they're big. But I mean, that is at least, you can follow that in English, but you have 95 different languages or 150 different languages all over the globe with all kinds of very specific, difficult political situations. So it must be extremely hard. But you have now an empire which has billions of people every day connected and spending endless amount of time. The responsibility, you know, forget about the money. The money is teeny compared to the responsibility you have as Google, you know, let alone other players.
So I agree that this sense of stewardship and the sense of responsibility is a vital element. But I also want to say that people should feel some responsibility for their own behaviors.
Of course, yeah.
And so when people behave irresponsibly, we presume that they will. I mean, historically we know that. We read Shakespeare's plays, and we still read them 400 years later for the obvious reason that it says exactly how people behave.
Yeah.
And that hasn't changed in 400 years. So I think we have to remind people that in addition to the rights that they feel they hold, that they have responsibilities. And I will confess to you that many people are happy to take the rights and forget about the responsibilities.
Yeah. No, but I totally agree. But you and four other parties have these billions of people which you connect all the time. Yes, we want those billions of people to change, but also normally what we've done in society, at least in the Netherlands and also I think in the US, but everywhere in Europe, if there's a powerful party, doesn't matter if it's the press or if it's the TV or if it's this or that, we start interfering in terms of rules and regulations, and we want them to be responsible. We force them by having crude laws to be responsible for certain things. And these big platforms until now have managed themselves. Is that going to be the future?
Well, you implied, though, something that I think we need to take into account that makes this so hard. Understanding in different languages what sensitivities have been violated and trying to do this in any automated way is incredibly hard. I mean, you think about in Thailand, for example, anything which impugns the integrity and purity of the king is a punishable offense.
Yes.
So how do you cope with that? It's not an excuse, but it is a fair observation that this is not an easy problem to solve.
Okay, let's stay with that.